The We're Going Family Style deal.
Because I want a bite of your Big Mac.
And I need some of your Quarter Pounder.
I'll try your filet of fish.
There's a deal for every friend group at McDonald's. Order any 2 classics for just $6. Price of participation may vary. Single item at regular price cannot be combined with any other offer.
Persecuted churches around the world. Here's Michael.
Joseph, a group of radicals showed up on the doorstep of Nora one day in the Middle East. You know what they did? They burned her house down, nearly killing her and her 4 daughters, the youngest of which, about 4 years of age, maimed for life with very serious burns. You know what her crime is? 2 things. Number 1, she's a born-again believer, and number 2, she was caught educating her daughters beyond the age of 8. In that part of the world, in that system, that is a very serious violation. But this woman did not grow bitter. She's grown bold from all of that, and she's led nearly 40 women to faith in Christ. All of these former radicals, they follow Jesus together, but they need Bibles there in the Middle East.
$5 sends a Bible, $50 sends 10. Help us send God's Word. Just call 800-YES-WORD, 800-YES-WORD, or click on the Bible League banner at singingnews.com.
WQEE 99.1 FM Noonan, WBRQ LaGrange, WZEV 90.5 FM Lineville, JC Sports Networks.
Good morning. I'm Gail Nankervis, your host of the Less Sucky Divorce radio show, and I'm the owner of Blue Skies Mediation in Peachtree City. I help people get a less sucky divorce. Not you, but maybe your neighbor or friend or sister. I'm a certified divorce financial analyst and a licensed family mediator, and I use these skills with my clients to help them get a professional divorce without escalating fees and emotions. My goal is to help them get through the divorce process while retaining their sanity, their assets, and most importantly, their integrity. So the topic of divorce for a radio show might seem a little weird, but with more than 50% of marriages ending in divorce, I thought it was important to share information or resources with the community. Even though divorce is very common, people don't typically talk about it while they're going through it. You usually just hear the nightmare stories at the end of it. So my goal is to change the way people in our community get divorced through educating them about different aspects, the process, the financial side, the emotional side, and everything in between. I'm excited to be here today, and we will be right back with the Less Sucky Divorce radio show.
Blue skies smiling at me, nothing but blue skies.
Good morning, Noonan. Happy Friday. This is Gail Nankervis, your host of the Less Sucky Divorce radio show. And I'm excited to be here. I feel like every Friday we have great weather because I get to always say, woohoo, look at this weather. So glad to be here again on another beautiful day. Today I have a good friend and colleague, Theresa Gray, with me as my guest. She's the owner of Blooms of Grace Counseling in Peachtree City, and we're going to talk about some of the emotional aspects about divorce. But I will let Theresa introduce herself. First of all, thank you for being here today.
Of course, thanks for having me. Good morning, everyone. My name is Theresa Gray. I'm the owner of Blooms of Grace Counseling Services. I have an office in Fayetteville, Georgia, and also provide telehealth services for clients anywhere in the state of Georgia. And I specialize in working with women navigating through anxiety, relationship challenges, low self-worth, depression, trauma, and anything else you could think of that someone might need to go any emotional boundaries and life transitions that you may be carrying. So Gail asked me to come and talk about just how counseling applies to people going through a divorce, right?
Yeah, well, whenever I talk to a client, whether it's the man or the woman, they're usually going through what I call divorce brain, where they're in a big brain fog. They're having a hard time making decisions. They're having a hard time moving forward. And then the worst part about it is that they're beating themselves up for that too. Yes. So it's not just that they're wallowing in their emotions, it's that they're piling more and more negative emotions on top of it, which really prevents them from moving forward. And
I've heard you use the word stuck before. I feel like a lot of people going through divorce are stuck, either stuck making a decision to leave the marriage for any reason, whether it's they have a business together, and that would be complicated, whether it's just maybe a codependent relationship that you're stuck in the pattern and don't know how to get out.
Kids.
Kids, money. Yeah, it's huge. And so getting unstuck is really important, but I think when they pile on the guilt and the shame, they're just kind of burying themselves and stuck a little bit more. But I know that's one of your specialties, is helping people get unstuck, right?
Yeah, for sure. Shame and helplessness are actually the top two emotions that people would do nearly anything to avoid. And I think divorce encompasses both of those completely, right? Feeling shame for this decision, feeling helpless and stuck, what to do, how to do it, where to go. So, I wanted to talk about all of the emotions that people experience and how to navigate through them without becoming stuck.
Okay. Well, good. And you know what? I think even people not getting divorced probably need this, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Emotions is one of those things where nobody teaches us what to do.
Right.
They teach us how to do calculus and fractions, and even maybe we have a foreign language requirement, but nobody teaches you how to communicate or manage your emotions. And even I, I'm a grown woman, I struggle with my emotions, and I struggle with them getting mad at myself about how I handle situations. So what are some of the ways you work with people through that? What are some of the main emotions you see, and how do you help them get unstuck?
Yeah, so the biggest thing is helping people identify what they're feeling, right? Because as a society, we're really good at just ignoring them, because sometimes we have to do that in order to survive.
Ignoring our feelings?
Right. We just have to shove them down.
Yeah.
And get through whatever we have to do for the day.
Or numb them away, right?
Exactly.
So numbing can be what, like eating too much food, over-exercising, going out with your friends and avoiding the things you need to do,
TV.
drinking too much, TV.
Yeah.
Do you know what I do sometimes? Sudoku puzzles.
Oh, yep.
And I like
mindless.
I like to think it's making me smarter, and that's really why I'm doing it. But I think it's a numbing thing. It's something that just takes my brain away. Yeah,
I mean, it's an aspect of dissociation, which sometimes is a protective factor, but sometimes it does more harm than good. So identifying the emotions, grief, shame, guilt, sadness, anger, fear, relief, joy, hope, anticipation, anxiety, apprehension, embarrassed, exposed, inadequate, resentful, grateful, optimistic, or thankful. That was a huge list of emotions that when I ask people to identify with their emotions, it's usually happy, sad, or mad. So we have to expand that a little bit. And in that list, if you noticed, a lot of those were opposites. And divorce encompasses, all of life situations, but divorce especially encompasses all of that, right? You may feel relief that you're getting out of a marriage that you felt just burdened by or even unsafe in, but you may feel shame for getting a divorce because this wasn't your intention, this wasn't your plan. Right. You're causing harm, like difficulties for your kids. But these emotions, one is not worse or better than the other. They are all just feelings that you are allowed to have, right? And
wait. So you're telling me that guilt, sadness, and shame are not worse than joy, hope, and gratefulness?
They may feel worse, but they're not worse.
Well, so if I can choose some emotions, guess which ones I want to choose?
Right, we want to choose the happy ones, of
which
course.
Which is why I avoid the other ones, right?
But does it work? Do they actually go away if you try to avoid them?
No, I think they come back as bigger, uglier monsters later.
Right, exactly.
And usually big, ugly monsters that I like to then throw in somebody else's face.
Right, we make it their problem. Yeah, we make it about them. These opposite emotions are so hard to hold together. It's called dissonance, right? It's oil and water. So as humans, we try to get rid of what's uncomfortable and live in what's comfortable. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't serve us well at all. So we have to practice holding both. And that scares people because that makes them feel like it's never going to go away. That's not true, right? Okay. Numbing them ignoring them, shoving them down to deep, dark places. We like to pretend that makes them go away, but it doesn't.
Right.
So what if we could feel them, identify them, acknowledge them, accept them, feel them, and then give them permission to do what they need to do? So often, after just giving themselves the grace to feel these emotions, my clients feel so much relief. So
how do they do that? They leave your office and go home depressed? Because that sounds like a terrible business model, Theresa.
Right. I mean, it's fine. Send them home. No, it is giving them the skills to know that these are emotions that exist, and then learning how to tolerate the discomfort of them. And as you learn to tolerate the discomfort, you learn to almost give yourself permission to live and feel, which causes relief.
So probably, I guess if you allow yourself to feel them, they're gonna have their way with you for a little while, and then you can move through them.
Exactly.
How do you not go take it out on everybody in your family at the same time? I think sometimes we shove our emotions down so that we can still get our kids to get to the parent pickup line and go to the teacher conference and go to church and all the things that we want to put on a happy face for. We don't want it to come out and affect people around us.
But it does.
It just does.
Yeah. Defense mechanisms, projection, right?
You know what? I guess it's a good lesson for our children too.
Right.
And to teach them about emotions, maybe.
Right. I mean, kids are so much healthier when they see their parents feeling and expressing emotions in healthy ways, as opposed to ignoring them or just pretending they don't exist or going in isolation to deal with them. Right? There's healthy ways to acknowledge, hey, this is something hard I'm going through. I want you to know what I'm feeling, and I'm going to work through this, and it's going to be okay. It's okay to feel these emotions.
You know, it's funny. I had one time in my marriage where my emotions came out in front of the kids, like all 1,000,000% of them, 20 years of stress and anxiety. My now ex-husband had posted some stuff online that was extremely hurtful, and I lost my mind. And my daughter was, I think the two middle ones that were with me then were 9 and 11 years old. And one of them just said, "Mama, you need to just block him." And I thought, oh, that's some good advice, 11-year-old. And I did. And then the 9-year-old sat there while I was crying and crying and crying, and I couldn't breathe. And she sat there holding me. And when I finally calmed down, the first thing I said was, because they were a witness to it. It was the one time that I lost it in front of the kids. For good reason. If I told you the story, you'd all be like, well, you didn't go get an axe also, right? So for good reason. So I looked at the girls and I said, wow. I said, well, have you ever heard those words come out of Mama's mouth before? They're like, no, I didn't know you know those words. I'm like, yeah, well, I was feeling...
Rose-colored glasses came off of them, Mom.
They were shocked, right? I'm like, well, I was really, really mad, and sometimes that's what happens, and sometimes those are the words that take over when you're really mad. I said, but have you ever seen me cry like this before? And they said, no. And I said, well, I'm glad you haven't, but I guess you should know that for the past few years, this is actually how I've been feeling inside.
Yeah.
This is how I feel.
Yeah.
Every day. You just saw it come out. So if I'm short with you, if I'm edgy and cranky sometimes, or you can't figure out why I'm, not super happy, this is why, because this is actually how I've been feeling.
Right.
And I thought it was kind of a cool way, other than them having to witness the incident, it was a nice way to be able to teach about, forgive me when I'm cranky, because this is actually what's real right now, not the perfect mom happy face going to the park with you. Right,
exactly. Have you ever heard of the anger iceberg? Have you ever heard of that?
No.
It's this visual that I use a lot with people, and the whole concept of an iceberg is that you see like the 10% up top above the water, but then 90% below the water. So on top you see the anger, right? That's what comes out. But below the water, this 90% is really everything else, like hurt and shame or sadness or betrayal. And those are the things you're actually feeling. But how do you communicate that? How do you work through that in a moment where you're really, really stuck? So anger is just the easiest thing and the most protective emotion, right? Because anger blocks vulnerability in a sense. It keeps us protected.
We'll have to have a whole other conversation about
I know,
anger
that wasn't in my
one day.
notes, but yeah.
But no,
didn't make me
another
think
day,
about
because
that.
that's huge. And
Yeah.
I think everybody could learn about anger, because I've never thought about it that way as a protection thing. To me, it's more of a offensive, not defensive.
Sure.
You know,
Yeah.
maybe because I've been on the receiving end, so it feels like I'm being attacked.
Right.
But anyway, we'll have a whole another show about anger
You're being
if you're up
attacked
for it.
because why? Yep. So anyway, yeah, we're back on track. Where did we leave off? So these emotions, not comfortable to feel opposites, right? But how do you feel two opposite things? And that is learning how to accept both, right? Like, think that if you have kids, I think kids are the greatest teaching tool. Your daughters are probably amazing, and you have a million things that you love about them, right? But there are also some aspects of their personality that you would really be fine if they didn't have. Do you accept all of them, or only the good parts of them?
Right.
All of them.
Obviously, all of them.
All
yeah.
of them, right?
Yeah.
And that's what we have that capacity. We have the capacity to hold opposites, to hold uncomfortable things, but we're just not so good at doing it for ourselves. Right? So, a technique in dialectical behavioral therapy, DBT, by Marsha Linehan, is called radical acceptance. And it's just this concept that we can choose to accept everything, right? We can choose. Now, I'm not saying you have to understand it. I'm not saying you have to understand the shame, understand the relief, understand the guilt. But to accept it is just to, like, I always tell people to, like, put your hands out in front of you and visualize both of them and just hold them, right? What does that anger look like? What does the relief look like? How do you just hold them? You don't have to fix it. You don't have to understand it. You don't have to solve it. Just hold it.
You know what? I think maybe another key is it doesn't define you. Yes. Right? It's just an emotion. It's not who you are.
Yes.
And I think we probably put so much weight on that, about those feelings, that help us pile it on more because we think it defines us. But really, it's just a fleeting emotion.
Right. It's not forever. It's not forever.
It feels like forever sometimes, doesn't it?
It does. When you're in a horrible situation, it feels like forever. And
one of
really
my favorite things is when I talk to my clients, especially at the beginning, the first couple phone calls. I always do an initial free client consultation, and everybody's a basket case, everyone. Yeah. And being able to sense just from our first phone call or our first meeting, the sense of relief from what you're going through is normal, and like recognizing what they're going through, giving them affirmation and permission to feel that, telling them it's normal, giving them little practical solutions like breathe.
Yeah.
Breathe. I had this guy he's pretty, he's a software engineer, and he's very, very technical and very buttoned up. And just yesterday, he texted me. He's like, "Don't worry, I'm breathing." Yeah. And I'm like, "Okay,
perfect. Glad to hear it."
Okay, I'm good. I'm glad because I'm trying to help them. I want to see their feelings settle down, or at least not abuse themselves over what they're feeling.
But that validation is everything, right? Everyone wants to know that what they're going through or what they're dealing with or what they're feeling is normal. That's what we all want to hear. Like, we're not the outlier. We're not doomed. We're not the only one who's feeling all these things, right? Just because as a society we don't all share it.
Right, we don't all put that on Facebook.
Right. We don't put it with our pretty little profile picture. Doesn't mean that you are the only one going through these things. So if you can validate, like, part of what I do is teaching my clients to validate themselves that what they're going through is okay, it's normal, and it's going to be uncomfortable, right? Just validating that. You would be so surprised how far it goes to see people learn to validate their emotions. We spend sessions on it. Just validate what you're going through. And then one day they come in and they're like, "Man, I felt so good this week." And I was like, "Why?" Because I told myself it was okay to be angry.
Yeah.
Like, what? You told yourself you were allowed to be angry and now you feel better.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how it works. I don't know why it works, but it does. Just giving yourself permission to feel. Giving yourself permission to feel relief that you're leaving a marriage, even though there's some bad there's some bad side effects.
Yeah. What I find is when I work with people who are very active in their church, there's a whole nother layer of emotions about getting divorced. about what the Bible says about getting divorced, and is this actually abuse or is this not abuse? Is this actually abuse or am I just long suffering? And the Bible tells me it's good to long suffer, right? And so trying to, that's where really the shame and guilt come in. And
especially during the Bible Belt.
Right? Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control.
Good job. Get your Bible sticker.
Thank you. I learned all those when I was nursing my daughter, my second, like 3 a.m. I would just sit there and like go through them memorizing. I absolutely remember learning those. But those feeling that you're going through when you're going through divorce, are pretty much none of those.
Right. No.
And so, like you said, having these different emotions and trying to reconcile with who you think you are.
Well, that goes back to like you're putting your identity in your behavior and your worth in your behavior or what you're doing or in your circumstances. And if we go the Bible route, like God says we're good enough and worthy just as we are. Just because he created us. He loves us. Right? So helping people see that, like, hey, you're good enough. And that's what I try to communicate with my clients all day, every day, divorce or not.
Yeah. Does that, so the name of your business, I meant to ask you about this earlier, is Blooms of Grace. So could you share a little bit about that? Because maybe that kind of touches into what we're talking about now.
Yeah, for sure. So blooms, I love flowers. I love plants. I think they're gorgeous and beautiful. But everything goes through a season, right? Like winter, everything dies and it's not beautiful and it's kind of ugly. But spring comes and these plants work really, really hard to maybe sometimes come up through the ground and create new life, or just rebloom the leaves and flowers on the bushes or trees. And that is hard work. Like, it is hard work to rebloom. It may be easier to just stay dead, right? For the trees to be like, ugh, I don't want to go through this again, right? So blooming takes work. And then the grace part of it is you have to give yourself grace in the middle of doing really, really hard work. Because counseling's not easy, right? A lot of things in life aren't easy. Going through divorce is not easy. You have to give yourself grace in the process. And if you are not in a place to do that because you don't know how, or you're really hard, like it's really hard, I will do that with you, right? I will be that person to be like, hey, you're doing great. I'm gonna remind you to give yourself grace, and you're doing good work. So that's kind of where the name comes from, and like, incorporating faith into my practice is important if clients are wanting that. God gives us an abundance of grace every day, right? We fall short all the time. So that's where the name comes from. And
we are supposed to find our identity in Christ, but I tell you what, there are days where I just want to be like, come on, one audible word.
Right. Can I just have like a neon sign?
Right. Just one audible word, but we still need that tactile from other people, that affirmation from other people. And I wish I could just say everything you say in the Bible is good enough for me, God, but I just really want a person to tell me sometimes.
Correct.
So I'm glad you can be that person for your clients, Theresa.
We're called to do. We're called to bear one another's burdens, and we can't always bear our own. So it's okay to ask someone to come alongside you, which asking for help is a whole other thing people aren't really good at. So I love working with that too.
So when people are in the midst of it, with all these opposing emotions and overwhelmed, and I imagine they're feeling just stress and anxiety. What are some tools you give them to help manage the stress and anxiety?
For sure. So first is just teaching them to accept their emotions, right? Giving themselves permission to feel whatever it is they need to feel. And that sounds really non-tangible, but it is tangible, it is practical to learn how to accept those emotions and feel them. Now, in times of like high anxiety or high distress, a really practical tool is called grounding. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it is so simple. It's kind of astounding that it actually works. But it's just engaging each of your 5 senses. So in a moment of stress or anxiety, you're typically worried about or preoccupied with or stressed about something in the past or the future, or something maybe even in that moment, and your brain is just like going down a spiral, right? So you have to re-engage the logic part of your brain. because there is a point when the emotional part of your brain just detaches. So using our senses is the most practical, effective tool to ground ourselves. So just sitting for a couple of minutes, what do you see? What are 2 things around you that you see are blue? What do you hear around you? Name 2 things you hear. Can you touch anything?
Okay, slow down.
Okay,
slow down,
okay.
Because I'm actually looking.
I'm doing it
I'm
with you?
looking
Okay.
now. Well, I want people, even wherever they are, if they're listening,
Yeah.
to be able to take these steps in and
Yeah.
maybe do it as you're going through it.
Okay.
So first, we're going to find 2 things that are blue.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I see the peacock there on the wall.
Perfect.
And the Braves sign right over there.
Perfect. Okay.
Okay.
What do you hear? What's something you hear?
Oh my gosh, did you hear those fire engines?
Yeah. Slightly distracting, maybe.
And I hear Ryan laughing at us.
Okay. What about touch? What is something around you that you can touch that's soft?
My belly.
Belly, okay. Belly. What else?
Your belly's not soft because you got a big old baby in there.
Yeah, it's hard as a rock.
Soft. Right. There's a baseball cap over here that's soft fabric.
Okay. Taste. Can you taste anything right now? I still have lingering coffee in my taste.
I had a protein bar on the way over here and some flavored water.
Yeah, flavored water. Perfect. So if you're in a situation where you're trying to utilize grounding, maybe put in a piece of hard candy and just focus on the candy or chew a piece of gum. That's really effective too. So smell. Anything you can smell. Does anybody
Well, that would be Ryan again. Just kidding. Just kidding.
Yeah, sometimes smell's a tricky one.
No, I smell pretty good from my perfume.
There you go.
Yeah.
Perfect. So that's something you can go through. If you're driving, just focus on your hands on the steering wheel, right? Describe that steering wheel in every detail you can. What color is it? What does it feel like? Is it hot or cold? What's the texture? Does it smell? Right? You don't have to lick your steering wheel, though. That'd be too much. So just utilizing whatever you can around you. And if you are truly focused on trying to find all of the physical senses around you, you're not going to be worried about whatever you were worried about 5 minutes ago.
Right.
So then you have the challenge of when you come out of that, not going back down the rabbit hole.
Right. So you just move on to the next best thing.
Right.
And the next best thing is not going back to that pit of despair.
Yeah.
Right.
And distraction is okay, right? You can
Well, I
distract
feel
yourself.
like that activity of the 5 senses is a really healthy form of distraction. You're forcing your brain to slow down
Right.
and focus, right? Whereas, like you said before, it's out of control. It's just like this jungle in there. I think about, remember Pigpen from Charlie Brown?
Yeah.
And all that stuff behind him, everywhere he went was.
Yes.
I feel like your emotions can be that, and they just follow you wherever you go.
Right.
And so, if you can use tools like this to just stop them,
Yeah.
and then leave them behind and keep
Right.
moving forward.
Right, and they don't go, it doesn't mean they go away forever, but they don't have to be in control of you. You can choose how you respond to those emotions. I think people are like, well, I can't control my emotions, or I don't know, like, if I'm just feeling them, whatever. Yes, they may come and go as they please, but how are you going to respond to them? How are you going to choose to be in control of your emotions? You get to have that power. Your brain is an amazingly, incredibly powerful, beautiful tool. Use it, right?
Just-
we get to have that, and it takes learning. It's a learning curve.
And we have like I don't know, like I think your brain makes trenches. Like you probably know better words than I do, but patterns.
And neural pathways,
Neural pathways, and then they get deeper and deeper the more you practice it. So if you stay there in your anger or you stay there in your depression, that becomes the first resort for your brain to go to, right?
Exactly. So that is I always use the visualization with people of, you've got tracks in the snow and they're really deep because you've been using a snow plow for years, and we are starting with a spoon to build a new track.
Oh.
So it's not a quick process, but it will, then the spoon turns into a shovel, and then the shovel turns into a four-wheeler, right? Like, you can create these new tracks, and when you do, the snow fills in the old one. And all of a sudden, you don't immediately go to anger. It's wild. It's so cool to see people watch people go through this and like encounter this kind of healing. It's amazing.
Do you find that most of your clients are like short-term clients that are getting through a rough period, or, you know, just fix me for life, Theresa?
Not for life. Most people come in for one thing that they think is like only the issue, and then we like kind of pick all the weeds out, and it's like, maybe there's some more things that lead to this one issue. Mm-hmm. So it usually does take a little bit more time than people are expecting, because they don't realize how so much childhood stuff leads in to this one little issue.
Well, I'm so thankful that you came today to talk with us about how to manage our emotions, especially the opposing emotions. And would you please take the next minute we have or so to tell people how they can contact you if they would like to get a consultation or have some therapy and learn to get unstuck in whatever stage of life they're in?
Yeah, for sure. Again, Blooms of Grace Counseling. My website is www.bloomsofgracecounseling.com. My phone number is, if you are driving, don't write and drive, 678-364-2180. But you can just Google Blooms of Grace Counseling and hopefully it will come up.
And our listeners already know that the easy way, if they're driving and can't remember, is they can find me at Gail, Gail, at lesssuckydivorce.com. And I can absolutely get you in touch with Theresa if you'd like to talk to her. Hope you have a great weekend. Thank you again, Theresa, for coming. And everybody, enjoy your weekend. Enjoy this weather.
Blue skies smiling at me, nothing but blue skies do I see. Bluebirds singing a song, nothing but bluebirds all day long. Never saw the sun shining so bright, never saw things going so right, noticing the days hurry